Hello and welcome to the New World Review, your source for everything anime and manga, and today we have returned to the realm of Jujutsu Kaisen, at which point we promptly find ourselves with one Megumi Fushiguro, an extraordinarily powerful and extraordinarily spiky-headed 15-year-old who is legitimately one of the most intriguing characters within the entire series. And when intrigue is piqued, knowledge must be seeked. And yes, I know that it should be sought, but that doesn't rhyme and I have no time for that sort of crime. So instead, I'm going to offer 10 fun facts that you did not know about Megumi Fushiguro. Or maybe you did, but you probably didn't know all of them, and even if you did, well, look, good for you, you got me there. But the only way to know for sure is to strap yourselves in and activate the emergency subscribe button for the New World Review, the pressing of which will form a binding vow allowing consistent injections of Jujutsu culture administered straight into your YouTube feed. But let's get into the thing that we are going to get into with Fushiguro fun fact the first, which is that he is the first character to be seen in this incarnation of Jujutsu Kaisen. Now, of course, some caveats here. The Jujutsu Kaisen prequel was the original story of this universe, and with that in mind, yes, you could say that Yuta is the first character technically introduced, but within the sequel, the first fancy face we see is Megumi Fushiguro, looking particularly annoyed, puzzled, and perplexed, as is often the case when he or anyone else is conversing with Gojo. Very notably, this was changed in the anime, and the first character to be seen are the legs of Yuji Itadori, which I imagine are named Ita and Dori respectively. Then of course we do also see the rest of Yuji, but that doesn't matter. However, in the manga, Mr. Megumi is the very first face to grace us, and I take the trouble to point that out because I do believe this was quite a deliberate decision. There are some fun parallels between Megumi and the former Jujutsu Kaisen protagonist Yuta Okotsu that will become clear in future fun facts. But for now, just take solace in the fact that the very first face that Gege Akutami wanted you to see was this grumpy mofo. And holding the title of Lord Grump, our second fun fact is that Fushiguro is extraordinarily skeptical. In the Jujutsu Kaisen fanbook, Akutami stated that Fushiguro quite keenly keeps up with all of the news, whether that be on TV or a newspaper or any kind of online news dispensary. However, Akutami also made mention that while he ingests a critical amount of current events, Fushiguro is highly skeptical and tends not to believe half of what he hears. And I mean, sure, how does the old saying go? If you don't read the news, you're uninformed, but if you do read the news, you're misinformed. Well, Fushiguro does prefer the latter, although he applies a large degree of critical thought. In addition to this, Akutami has also noted that Fushiguro is quite overly negative and even misanthropic. Fushiguro himself has also stated his philosophy that the world is simply designed to be unfair, and nothing we've been shown in Jujutsu Kaisen really contradicts that, so it does seem like a reasonable opinion. The point being that it takes a lot to gain his trust, which is why Yuji is quite the special boy. Not only did he break Fushiguro's pessimistic mindset, but he also very quickly earned his trust. It's very odd in retrospect, but that is the power of the shonen protagonist. Meanwhile, Akutami put quite a bit of thought themselves into the name Megumi Fushiguro. Megumi's name is actually quite relevant within the series itself, and it has been brought up on multiple occasions, due to how feminine it sounds. And that's because Megumi, whilst not exclusively so, is more often than not a name given to female children. The kanji itself is one of the most popular because it means all sorts of, wonderful things, such as blessing, gift from heaven, luck, favor, intelligence, etc. It goes on and on and on. If it is a good thing, Megumi probably means it. And you know what? I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. This kanji is OP. And as such, if you were a Japanese parent of any child, then it would be almost a crime not to assign them with the Megumi kanji. And as for Fushiguro, this actually follows the Gege Akutami protagonist naming scheme, coming directly from the Fushiguro plant, in the same way that Yuji Itadori takes his name from the Itadori plant. Sadly, however, the kanji used to construct this name pretty severely contrasts the whole Megumi portion, with Fushi meaning to drop or lower and Guro simply meaning black. So I suppose the overall message that we have with Megumi Fushiguro is that he is a kind blessing lowered into an extraordinarily dark situation, which definitely does seem pretty spot on considering his role in the series. And we can see this at work with fun factor 4, which is that Fushiguro actually becomes quite depressed when his Shikigami die. As do I, honestly, because I was not ready for the loss of Divine Dog Model White, and I am legitimately terrified every time that Fushiguro summons a Shikigami because every battle could be their last. But I'm also quite curious. Let me know down in the comments below what your favorite Fushiguro Shikigami is. I'm gonna put in a preemptive vote for Max Elephant because I do like the idea of an elephant named Max. And this is where Fushiguro's kind-hearted niche really shines through, as Akutami has also identified him as the kind of person who gets more upset when animals die than when humans die, which really highlights the meaning of his name, such a sweet boy engulfed in horrific darkness, perpetually forced to use his animal friends friends for combat. It's sort of like Pokemon in a way, just the more high-stakes version. And Team Rocket is a cursed king who is trying to steal your body. Because seriously, nobody should look at a 15-year-old the way that Sukuna looks at Fushiguro. But maybe Sukuna's just curious, because those who have read both the manga and watched the anime will note that Fushiguro's hair differs quite greatly between the two. In the manga, early Fushiguro had quite modestly spiky hair. However, the anime turns his head into a full-on hedgehog. And there's a couple of fascinating reasons as for why this was done. One of which is that Akutami is very conscious that drawing Fushiguro can often end up looking like the frame of Yuji. So as time went on, Akutami made Fushiguro's hair longer and more hedgehog-like in order to give him a stronger contrast to Yuji. But this whole issue stems from something even cooler than that, because when making the sequel Jujutsu Kaisen series, Akutami had to create a new protagonist, being Yuji, but to keep him distinct enough from Yuta, Akutami gave Yuta's basic hairstyle to Fushiguro, because I guess they really liked it and didn't want to part with the style. But in addition to that, Yuji inherited Inumaki's hair. So in a way, the Yuji and Fushiguro duo are just a flipped perspective on the Yuta and Inumaki duo. And it's kind of crazy because now when I look back at the chapters and I see Inumaki and Yuta on the same page, all I see is Yuji and Fushiguro. To bring things back to something of a somber note, our sixth fun fact is not, in fact, fun at all. And that's because Akutami has confirmed that due to Fushiguro's long career as a Jujutsu sorcerer, he has actually had several friends die. Which is interesting because in the series, he and Kugisaki have a discussion about death after that whole that Yuji dying incident, and Fushiguro claims that this is the first time that a classmate of his has died, being very specific about the term classmate. Which, I don't know, does that make Akutami's statement even more depressing? When I first read that, I thought it was referring to friends who may have studied alongside Fushiguro and signed up for that brutal world of Jujutsu's stuff. But apparently over the course of his short life, Fushiguro's had several friends who have just passed away, which is quite sad. But I suppose that's one of the many reasons why Fushiguro had to mature very rapidly into the Lord of Gloom that he is today. Now, the next fun fact took me a bit aback when I first heard it, but despite being roughly about the same age, Fushiguro is actually the nephew of Maki Zenin, as well as Mai. We shouldn't forget Mai. So Maki and Mai are 1 year older than Megumi, but when it comes to the Zenin family tree, Maki's father is Megumi's granduncle, with Megumi technically acting as the youngest generation of the clan. And just to clear something up here before the comments go crazy with all the people that start sentences with the word actually, obviously in Western culture, Mai and Maki would be Fushiguro's cousins. However, in most Asian cultures, this would be considered an aunt-nephew relation. And given that Jujutsu Kaisen was written by a Japanese person in Japan, and the story also takes place in Japan, we're gonna go with that. And it has more to do with generations, so Maki and Mai would be the cousins of Toji Fushiguro because they're from the same generation. However, because Megumi is one generation below them, that activates a sort of respect dynamic, and so Maki and Mai are treated with the role of aunts. So it's always interesting how families work out like that, although I mean nothing will ever be weirder than JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, where Giorno Giovanna is technically Jolin Kujo's great-great-granduncle, despite the fact that he is only 6 years older than her. There's no time travel involved either, that's just how crazy JoJo is for you. Before I go too deeply down the JoJo hole, let's get back to Fushiguro with fun fact number 8, which is all about his birthday. So while researching for this video, I came across a lot of Fushiguro knowledge dumps, all of which mentioned his birthday as something along the lines of, Megumi Fushiguro was born on December 22nd, and that makes him a Capricorn. Which is nice and all, but for whatever reason, none of them seem to actually mention the significance of the December 22nd date. This day falls smack bang in the Toji period for Japan, the winter solstice essentially, which occurs between the 21st to 23rd of December. And of course, it is known for being the longest night of the calendar year. So that is very significant because it further emphasizes Fushiguro's relationship with darkness. If it wasn't bad enough that his technique revolves around shadows and the kanji for black is literally in his name, well, he was also born on the longest night of the year. This man, or boy, I suppose, because he's not a man, whatever he is destined for darkness. Furthermore, Toji also happens to be the name of Megumi's father, albeit constructed with different kanji. But the intent is pretty clear. It's a very clever Japanese pun, and I love the effort that Akutami puts into small details like this. Because think about it, Megumi was born on Toji from the peen of Toji. For something a little less profound, fun fact number 9 is all about social interaction, and in this case specifically, it has been noted by Akutami that Fushiguro does not respect his senpai, Inumaki. By which I mean Fushiguro affords all of the superficial respect that a child exactly 1 year older than him deserves, but the reason why Fushiguro has a secret bout of disrespect is because Inumaki gets easily caught up in shenaniganry. Quite specifically, the shenaniganry of Panda and Gojo. I suppose Inumaki is a sort of social chameleon who can adapt to whoever is around him. And sadly for Fushiguro, the concept of having not only one but two Gojos, also known as as Gojai for plural, is quite a terrifying and mildly annoying prospect. But it is Gojo that leads us into fun fact number 10, which is that one day, Megumi Fushiguro could very well be as powerful as Satoru Gojo, or potentially even greater. Fushiguro is a great sleeping giant of Jujutsu Kaisen, someone who with each and every arc ends up completely surpassing every expectations I thought I had for him. And Gojo himself has stated that Megumi very much is the shining future of this world and capable of at the very least equaling him one day, which is my favorite fun fact of all because the Fushiguro hype train has well and truly left the station. At some points he even feels more like the protagonist than Yuji does, and in the end if Yuji were to die, then I can see Fushiguro being the person who lingers and fulfills the Gojo role going forward in the next generation. And while we're on this topic, here is a bonus fact, which is that Gege Akutami has already decided how Fushiguro's story is going to end. Whatever happens to this magnificent hedgehog, it is now set in stone. Which is interesting because other characters like Yuji are admittedly still up in the air and open for change. So I'm not sure whether to be happy or terrified that Fushiguro has such a clear path forward. All I know is that I do trust Gege Akutami to bring this character to a satisfying conclusion, no matter how happy or depressing that may be. For some enhanced satisfaction, however, do go and check out this video. There is always more to learn, discover, and enjoy about this series, so I look forward to seeing you there.